Let's get it started.
Double O.
Think like a rapper.
Check, 1, 2. This is your man Double O, and we are back with Think Like a Rapper, episode 113. Gonna try something new today. Gonna do a little bit of a shorter intro. Not gonna talk too much. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's holding up okay. This week I got to catch up with JANEE Boldon. She is the Senior Content Director of Interactive One. Interactive One includes Bossip, Hip Hop Wired, and Global Grind. And if you're a fan of phrases like smash the cake to smithereens, then you know Bossip's work. I wanted to figure out what was behind those amazing title alliterations, how she balanced the switch going from tried and true hip-hop publications like Double XL to the more gossip-centric Bossip, where they draw the line on stories they choose to report and not report, and what the hell happens next. Think Like a Rapper, episode 113, JANEE Boldon. Follow her at JANEEBOLDEN. Because you are, in one of the first states reopening in this madness. How is all that sort of been? Like, how are you operating?
Well, I'm still operating like somebody who has some degrees and some good common sense. I'm not really leaving my house, to be honest with you. Like, if I have to go to the store or something, it's not like, The Walking Dead where I'm like making a run and it's, life or death. It doesn't feel that imminent, but I'm really trying not to do anything. I've had people like invite me to small gatherings or like even just want to hang out one-on-one or whatever. And I've just been kind of like, my 70-year-old mother lives with me. Yeah. I'm not exposing her to any risk. She actually is probably taking more risk than I am. Like she's, she doesn't hesitate to go run an errand, or she's been really into like fixing up the house during this process. So she's like at Ace Hardware and Lowe's like every other day. Yeah. Like I forgot to get I got to get more paint for the porch. And I'm like, like if the porch isn't going anywhere, we could definitely paint that this summer. But, she likes to stay busy.
How have you, because it's been interesting. This might be too deep of a question to even jump in. But like, how have you been mentally sort of wrestling with that? Because my parents, mid-60s, same sort of thing. It's like they're acting like, my dad especially is in the, diabetes, high blood pressure, all that fun stuff. But they act like, it's whatever. It's, like, I'll be fine, or I'm going to die. It's fine.
It's like, that's so morbid. Dealing with that, I think the thing is, like, I kind of have deferred to her for everything. So, like, even when I've had friends like, hey, I'm going to stop by and drop something off or whatever, like, I'll ask her, like, hey, Leslie's going to come by. Like, is that cool? And she's like, she'll kind of give me her gauge. Even, like, the invite I got was to a friend's birthday party. They were going to do it on her back porch, which she was saying they would have enough room to social distance. Yeah. And everyone she was inviting, she said, had been in quarantine. So she felt comfortable that, like, it wasn't a bunch of people who've been, like, all over the place. Yeah. And so I still was like, I can't come unless my mom, I felt like I'm still in high school or something. Like, I can't go unless my mom says it's okay. So I asked her what she thought, and she was just like, it's not really a good idea. But she was saying more so because this was at the time before the governor had opened up everything, and they were calling the police on people who were having gatherings. Yeah. So she was like concerned that maybe the neighbors might report us. But overall, I think we're both playing it pretty safe. And I think most people who live in Georgia are like looking at the governor like, are you crazy? Especially because our state is one of the worst when it comes to testing. There hasn't been a lot of COVID testing. And then we've actually had a few reports of people getting false negatives. I think that's a big concern everywhere, is that 100%. Like this testing technology is not what it should be. And even when it comes to other countries, like it's just bad here in terms of the way that the regulations have been. I've seen so many nightmare like viral videos of like nurses like basically snitching, like
Yeah.
these people don't know what they're doing. And like we should really be concerned as people of color because the news and the media are saying, it's because we're predisposed, we have like pre-existing conditions, et cetera, but it's also because we are in a society that doesn't value us. So like when you go to a hospital, a doctor isn't going to treat you the same way that they might if you were your white neighbor,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's, and I actually think, unfortunately, that's also part of the reason why there has been kind of like a push to reopen, because it's kind of like, oh, well, we are not at risk. If we're in this range, it's like, oh, older people and those people are the ones that are at risk. So I guess we can.
I heard a lot of that at the beginning of it, but I think it's just troubling because now they're saying like there's something that kids get that's not exactly the same symptoms. It's different, but they're thinking it's related. You're seeing people being concerned because pets are having issues, and it's just a scary time. It kind of reminds me in a weird way, like it's two totally different things because one is terrorism and the other is like infectious disease. But like after 9/11, when like immediately after 9/11, when no one had any idea what was going on, and it was just kind of like, why did this happen? Who did this to us? Like it was a big mystery. And that's when you started hearing about, did we even hear of Al-Qaeda really before that, or Taliban or jihad or any of that?
Yeah, it definitely was not. It's funny because now it's a hilarious thing as a cultural reference, but when you go back and watch like movies from like 97, 98, 99, there was definitely like, there was this specter of like this very sort of a caricature of a terrorist, like from a random Middle Eastern country that they would literally just make up and all this. So I guess it was in the zeitgeist a little bit, but in the end, I mean, we were definitely caught blindsided, and the same thing with this. And this is a little bit more sort of sinister almost, because it's like no one has any clue how it's really going to affect.
Fix it, how to address it.
Yeah, like I know one of my friends, his brother's like just coming out of having been on a ventilator twice. And I think he might have been in for about a month plus now. And it's just like just learning how to walk again and just going through a process of like, oh, this is not just such a, I was down for 2 or 3 days and then I'm fine. I have another friend that was in a coma for a week and a half. And these are people, these are
healthy in the age or like in their younger,
they're
on the younger side.
35 to 45, basically. And actually both of those people in their 30s. And so it certainly needs to be something that needs to be taken more seriously, but this is America, right? We like wilding out.
This is America.
Well, this is, like my brother and I often have this over intellectualized conversation about freedom. And I'm sure, you probably had some in your NYU dorm rooms, but like there is this thing that you weigh, especially when you've been to a ton of different countries, that like there is, as Lupe would say, freedom isn't free. Like there is an actual cost of it.
Yeah,
and sometimes that cost is sort of lives, and it's figuring out how to balance out where that seesaw kind of falls. And I don't know if it ever correctly balances, because when you see some of the protests in your state, some of the protests in California out here, I don't get it, because I'm like, I had 2 tours canceled. I had all this stuff happen, but I'm, luckily on unemployment as a freelancer, all the other stuff. And I'm just like, why are you rushing to go back to, put yourself in a position that you were essentially just, it's like they want to, the perpetuation of this fiction that is the American dream was the reason that essentially either kept them on the hamster wheel, but also kept it so that they just made it every month. Like every month you just scraped by, oh, I made it again and made it again. And now that it's slowed down, no one wants to really sit with themselves and their decisions.
Yeah.
And really like, okay, is this the right path forward? They're just like, no, let's just put me back on the train.
I think that's anytime like things change, like people want things to stay the same and it to be familiar. And I think that's why Make America Great Again was so attractive to these exact same people who are running around with no masks protesting. And it is like really just, I don't know, there's really not another word I can think of besides ignorant. Like I saw a video today of a woman who was like trying to go to Gelson's without a mask, and she was acting as if she was like being oppressed because she couldn't come in the store. And they were volunteering, like, ma'am, give us your shopping list. We'll do the shopping for you. Just give us your credit card and we'll get you your items. And she was like, she tried to claim she had a medical condition that prohibited her from wearing a mask. And because of HIPAA laws, she didn't have to disclose what this condition was. But it's just like, I don't understand why people don't understand. Everyone has to wear a mask for it to work. Like I'm wearing a mask to protect you, not to protect me, to protect you. And then I need you to wear the mask to protect me.
And that's
the only way. And it's just as simple as that. And it's like, sure. Okay. So now you want to leave home. You don't want anyone to tell you that you can't leave home, but you don't want to take the precautions that are going to make it safe for as many people to leave home as possible. And I mean, there's all types of things that I've definitely been keeping up, especially with the New York Times. So like when you look at some of the other countries and what they're doing and you see that masks actually worked in like certain countries, masks work great in Hong Kong. Like they I believe they only had like 4 cases in Hong Kong. I want to say Czechoslovakia was one of the other countries, or there's a few places where they were just saying like, really, they just did the basics and wore masks. And I mean, it's just crazy. The numbers, it does seem like it's going down, but I mean, they do also, it's just hard to say without the testing, right?
Yeah, I mean, without testing, and to be honest, I mean, we don't actually know what's going to end up shaking out after all of this, because there's probably going to be a bunch of, I mean, you see what's happening in New York, unfortunately, but not even just that, like just simply the fact that like, when you find just bodies in a friggin', in trucks, and they're like,
so those numbers,
those
numbers aren't counting or whatever.
And there was another New York Times article where they were talking about a bunch of, just people dying at home, how the rate of people dying at home shot up from like 20 to 200 people a day or something like that. And they're like, there's only one variable that's changed here, and it's this, this pandemic. So it's like are those things going to count? Or, it's definitely crazy. And I don't want to,
I work in media. Yeah, I work in media. So like we have tons of stories about it every day. And like 2 stories that stand out to me today are like one, which was that one woman coughing at an event led to like multiple cases. One woman coughing.
Yeah.
And then the second was, the refrigerator trucks that were being used to store the bodies are now being cleared to go back to what they were being used again to hold food. And that to me is mind boggling. And like, there's just so many little things that are wrong with this picture. And I think a lot of it at the end of the day boils down to leadership or the lack thereof. And the fact that the systems that were in place to handle a pandemic on this level have been completely dismantled. And like, you literally can turn on the news and you have Mike Pence will not wear a mask.
And your boy
President Trump will not wear a mask.
And now he's taking hydrochloroquine today. And it's just like, wait, but that didn't work. He's just like, oh yeah, but I just
but he might have a heart attack, and I don't want to say the wrong thing and get charged with treason, so I won't. But, that is a side effect of hydrochloroquine. So while he's on there talking about how it's his preventative measure, because he's trying to sell stocks.
Yeah. Speaking of that, to shift gears a little bit, how has all of this, has it changed the types of stories that you want to report? Has it changed even the reactions to maybe the stories, let's say on some place like Gossip specifically, that have been reported prior to? Like, is there less engagement with certain things, or is there actually more engagement with certain
I think people really want distraction still. So I think the COVID stories are not really doing all that well. Like, of course, like the celebrities who've had it or whatever, that kind of thing has been of interest. And people are reading them to some extent, but the celebrity news stories are still the ones that people are interested in.
Yeah.
And not necessarily anything to do, like having nothing to do with it. People are still looking for distractions.
Is it like, are you seeing an increase in terms of readership?
In traffic?
Yeah.
It's hard to say, because I feel like there have been times where it seemed like the traffic was up, and I think it's because, there's more people who aren't at work or at home or whatever. And I know that it was initially what we had kind of hoped for, was like, okay, we should see an uptick in traffic because, for one thing, everything's shifting to digital. If you turn on your TV, you see the struggle that regular TV programming is having to maintain a lot of their shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see them trying to do the Zoom thing, which doesn't work as well, honestly, for television. So you see people turning more to like digital for their news and for entertainment. It's really, when it comes to work, I've had more work probably than in the past, just because everyone is literally like, can you put this on the website? And I think it's because, they might have been looking more for radio or TV media in the past, but because radio's down, people aren't in their cars listening to radio
streaming
right
is
now.
down too.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, I can't really say it's one thing or the other, but I definitely have been more inundated with work. I actually was starting to wonder if I have more work, or if it's just the fact that I don't have a flight to run and catch or an event to go to. So I'm lacking that balance. It's literally like, well, nothing is pulling me away from this computer, so I'm just going to sit here until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Yeah.
So you've seen a shift, I guess, from the maybe more of the industry side in terms of publicists and that ilk sort of now looking at you guys like, okay, this is where eyeballs are, because
and also because people are like trying to push their content, right? So they're like, you see there's more content, you see people shifting and changing gears. So instead of all the live events, people are doing Zoom events, and they still, you know what I'm saying? They still want us to like can you let the people know that this person's going to be on Zoom at this time, or this person's going to be on house party, this person's going to be on IG Live. It's like a million IG Live events.
Too many
Live events. Red Table Talks, you know what I mean? It's like everyone wants to, and everyone's talking about how COVID-19 is affecting, whatever it might be, mental health, marriages and relationships. If you look at the film industry, for whatever, for example, they are shifting. So instead of doing theatrical releases, you're seeing a lot more digital releases, which in turn need digital press because people have to know about the projects, So I'm getting a lot of pushes. Can you interview this person about this or this person about that? And it's because of what's going on with COVID-19, they, they're like, what's available? Okay.
Yeah.
Blogs are still available. Let's use the blogs.
Yeah. It's funny. You guys are, one of the very few that are still standing from the illustrious, and 15, almost 20 years ago now, so the beginning of the blog era. Besides the literary wit with which the headlines are written, what do you attribute that sort of to?
smart business is part of it. Like we definitely have adjusted, and we've changed ownership. At one point we were acquired by Interactive One, which is, part of the Radio One family. So I think that definitely helped when we were under, one business model that wasn't necessarily working, and we were able to, we were acquired by another stronger one. Yeah. I think the headlines have always been a little bit crazy, and I think that they are just ramping up because, like, honestly, we just get encouraged to go beyond and be more outlandish every time. So it's like we're always looking to outdo that, and then
without sorry to interrupt, but without asking too much of the process, is it essentially everyone is tasked with, if they're writing the story, writing the headline, or is there like a brain trust of headline writers? Or
there's definitely people who are like better at it. You know what I mean? There's like, I would say, if anyone knows Alex Ford, he goes by Alejandro Iglesias on most social media. He is the ultimate. He's the best headline writer. I don't really care if the other ones get mad at me. Alex is definitely the best. And we all have borrowed certain things from him. And I definitely, when I need help with my headlines, I always ask him. But everyone is good at them. Like literally, in order to work for the brand, you have to take a writing test, and it includes writing a headline. So you're not even getting in the door if you're not creative when it comes to those things. But it's one of those things, like we've always had a certain, like Marv, who is SVP of editorial across the I1 brands. She actually was one of the first people to work for Bossa. She was, the Chief Creative Officer when we were under Moguldom, and had joined the company in 2006 when it started, about 6 months after it started. And she's always called it lingo. Lots of lingo. So there's certain things that have been part of the lingo. Smithereens has been around for 15 years. Yes.
Smash to Smithereens has been in there.
Smash to Smithereens has been in the lexicon for that long. Certain other things, like it just after a certain point, it's like I think I came up with calling Tristan Thompson Tristan with a Y, like because he was Tristing, but it's just, when you like language and you play with language all the time, that's where it comes from. And I think we're a bunch of people who are kind of snarky, and it's supposed to be comedic. Sometimes people can get a little mean, and I frequently, that's my task as management, I have to come and say, like, listen, they don't really think that they deserved that level of a headline, but
I've always wondered this about you. Like, you come from this obviously very legitimate sort of journalistic space, and you have all these hip hop bona fides.
I do.
How did you sort of? There's always this kind of like, there's always this balance, right, of saying, there are these things that the culture has given me that I hold dear, that I respect, that I want to represent properly. And then there is things that work well in media, things that, are going to get eyeballs, and sort of balancing that thing. It's like this culture that helped raise me, that let me know who I am. How do I sort of give back to it in a way that does not, become negative to a certain extent?
I think it's definitely a gut check. So like, if you don't feel right about something saying, you know what I mean? Like, and even with the headline thing, every headline doesn't have to, like, I say this to my staff all the time. Every headline doesn't have to be crazy. Like, you could do a straightforward headline. So that's part of it. And I think I always do try to put myself into the person's shoes. You know what I mean? I think sometimes it's hard, and I have to check myself, because say it's like a celebrity breakup story, like as a woman, I'm gonna probably be thinking from the woman's perspective. So I do have to like check those type of things. But in general, when it comes to hip hop, I mean, I think the staff overall has a lot of respect for the culture, so like it's not that big of an issue. Um and sometimes, and I think the thing is that, and the thing that we've always said is like, for people who are fearful, if you don't do something to put yourself in that position, like you're not going to end up in that position. Like a lot of the more misfortunate things that are reported on, people do a lot of those things to themselves. They do dumb stuff. And when you do dumb stuff, it gets written about, you know? I think in terms of actually ending up in this space, ironically, people keep comparing this time that we're in now to the recession, that the 2009 recession. And that's actually how I ended up working for Gossip. I had been a very successful freelance writer, as you were talking about, being a hip hop bona fide, writing for The Source, XXL, Vibe, SOHH, and literally SOHH got hit hard in that recession. XXL, all the Harris Publishing Company magazines that were coming out, our salaries dropped. Like they went from $1, they were halved, and then they halved them again. So like 1 month they were like, hey, instead of $1 a word, it's going to be 50 cents a word. And then the next month they're like, okay, now it's going to be $0.25 a word. So I had a steady income. I was actually doing very well. Like you remember, I would fly, I was living in LA, I'd fly to New York, hang out with friends for a couple weeks, like go wherever, things were going on. And I couldn't do that anymore. It was like having to call, it's just like people are doing now, having to call and have my car payment moved to the end of the loan and all those type of things. And I literally was like praying for a job. And a friend of mine told me Gossip was looking for a managing editor. I applied. I happened to hit it off really well with Marv Frazier, who's the chief content officer. And the plan was really like get in there, learn from her, and get back out. Because I loved being freelance and I loved working in the hip hop environment. The money is great in Gossip, but there's definitely a price that you pay. What is the price you pay? And like sometimes I've had to deal with friends being angry, like people questioning my loyalty or like what my relationship with them was, if I might use them to get information and all of those kind of things. And I think as a journalist, most of us have a little bit stronger moral code than most people. And I've always been the type of person where my relationships have come first. I think that especially for the people that knew me when I was writing for XXL, like they've come to learn that even in that capacity for Gossip, like I'm still that same person where if we have this relationship, I'm trustworthy, So that's really it. Just trying to stay true to myself and I also really have made a point to stay low. Like I've never been like that girl on Instagram taking a picture with every rapper that I interview, like, if I want to help you promote your project, I might post about it. But
you got to keep, I guess you have to learn at a certain point to keep distance. Because absolutely, especially back then, right as the recession was hitting, I think I always attribute, especially in New York at that time, it's just like every single journalist, every single rapper, every single aspiring rapper, every single, photographer, model, whatever, everyone was at the same, Bacardi sponsored album release, free liquor parties, and just bouncing around in it. Yeah, it can easily become this sort of world where it's hard to really be critical with distance of some of these people, because everyone's just hanging out all the time. And especially in an era then where I feel like it's funny because I actually think it's what's slowly beginning to reap its in talking about Gossip over the last couple weeks, some of these media people, promoters sort of being exposed in this on Twitter. I feel like I was talking to somebody about it, and I feel like unfortunately, I think granted it's happened in history forever, I feel like a lot of the seeds of it were happening during that time because you just have this because no one knew what was happening during the blog era. Like, you were writing for this thing, but it wasn't a magazine. And then the magazine people were also kind of like, well, I'm writing online at this thing. There was not this, the industry was in such this weird flux that it elevated people that maybe were not used to whatever that sort of role that power. You know, exactly. And now everybody is seen at a certain level without
that abuse of power.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have happened in a previous era because of all of the gatekeepers, because of all of the bullshit that you would have had to go through.
I mean,
no, it still happened.
It happened for sure.
It happened, but I feel like there's a. It's weird because it feels like it's the
like
stuff
the checks. Maybe you're saying like the checks and balances weren't there in the same way, especially.
Yeah.
When it came more to the corporate, it wasn't so much of corporate entities. You had a lot of individual enterprises that grew probably faster than anyone expected that they would.
Yeah, there's also
you had people who are gained a lot of notoriety and power, and they didn't have that experience of really having to struggle. And when you struggle, you get to understand, you understand human nature a lot better. You understand others. You're more compassionate. You have more empathy.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And it's just definitely a lot of people, a lot of dudes that shouldn't have been given the power that they were given. And then, it's like, no, you should have just still been on Wall Street, or you should have just still been working you shouldn't have gotten a taste of this entertainment thing that you wouldn't know what to do with, basically.
Yeah.
But I still think that era has also given us a lot, and I'm appreciative of kind of sort of being a part of it. I wanted to,
same.
Yeah, because it's now it feels like it's fully sort of manifesting whatever ideas we were making up when it was 4:00 in the morning and we were at, wherever, whatever breakfast spot, just being like, yeah, and then this is going to happen. As long as they just let me do this, then, in terms of the, I end up interviewing a lot of journalists because I'm always really intrigued, sort of, especially with the space that you guys exist in now, because I feel like more than ever, because of social media, what have you, you guys are, you're doing interviews all the time as opposed to just being a byline.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting space to kind of, I guess, interview the people that are used to being interviewed. This is a nerdy question, but in thinking about,
I love nerdy questions.
Okay, so in thinking about like the current news, current topic, something that happened literally 10 minutes ago that you guys have to write a story about and get up, versus thinking about more evergreen content, is there a decision that you guys make that we're kind of just going to be always right at the spear, getting this stuff before anyone really knows about it? Or do you balance out sort of things? It's like, okay, we'll have some of these and then we'll have something that maybe someone finds 2 years from now.
You have to have both.
Yeah.
You have to have both. Like, they're honestly so I manage 2 different sites, Bossip and Global Grind. Mm-hmm. I'm the senior content director of pop culture at Interactive One. So the 2 brands, they have a lot in common, but they also have a lot different. So Bossip still has really strong, Bossip has really strong organic traffic. So like we still have a really strong audience. It's like checking for us on a regular basis. And then Global Grind is really more viral stuff. So the things are more timely, you know what I mean? But they also have a really strong, I guess, nostalgic audience. So like people who are reading the older content.
Yeah. So
that older content is like still getting great views.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've learned from, like when you have something that people are consistently coming back for, you have to figure out ways to give them more of it. So like some of it is taking old content, repurposing it, and making it evergreen. And you see evergreen content everywhere. So like that's what year-end content is really. It's like evergreen and stuff that like people at the end of the year, they want to think about everything that happened this year. But you also have like just natural curiosity. So like people want to know, like, guess which rappers like you never would guess are half part Asian or something. You know what I'm saying? Something random like that. Now, our big one for gossip is like the hottest. It's called, what's it? Cakes and lulls, cakes and like LOLs and cakes.
Yeah.
And it's like the hottest Wildin' Out girls.
Yeah.
So like we'll do like a gallery of all the hot, you know, women who have been models on Wildin' Out. Something like that is evergreen content. And we do that regularly. Or even like, remember when Teacher Bae was a thing?
Mm-hmm.
So then we did teacher bays, we had flight attendant bays, we had lawyer bays, doctor bays. That's evergreen content. Like when people, you know, like the whole bay thing was a thing, you know, or you want to talk about celebrity transformations. Like this is all pop culture content, you know, stuff that you want to grab onto. But at the same time, like if I wake up in the morning and something is trending on Twitter, I'm not satisfied until my staff has something about whatever's going on. Now, preferably, I want them to come up with a new angle. So it's not this just regurgitation of what happened with Earl Thomas and his wife last night, you know?
Yeah, no.
And that was just an arbitrary example.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunate. Yeah. That.
Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, unfortunate. How... and we can move, we'll move forward from this, but like this is almost antithetical to your obviously your job and your position. But do you, thinking about when you were growing up and learning about hip hop and learning about celebrities and kind of like it's still being a bit of a walled garden where you and it's coming full circle now with like us watching The Last Dance. If you've seen any of it, it's like super revealing. You're just like, what? This existed? You know, like they were doing this while they were winning championships or doing all of that. Do you do you think that it is better building celebrities in that old way? You know, do you think that, because I feel like everything that we love that has come out of the 90s and the 80s to a certain extent, and the early 2000s even, is like almost at an iconic status. Like even people that you wouldn't necessarily, people that are having new iterations of themselves sort of in this era, they were already they had become this iconic thing back then. But now, because there's so much information, there's so much put out there, there's so much, you're always being inundated by, by everything. You have one-hit wonders, let's say, that might last longer now, but it feels like it's still not as impactful in a way. You know, like if you think about like the hottest song from 5 years ago,
I have no idea what that was.
Exactly. You know, like exactly. And it's this, as much as everything's in your face, it's also quickly and easily to forget. And like, which celebrity do you think is a little, I guess maybe is stronger, more important, long lasting? Which would you rather have?
I mean, I think it's a lot of it is still dependent on the personality too, because like if you look at Beyonce and Jay-Z, for example, like they're super guarded. You know what I mean? Like when they did decide to come up off of private information, it was on their own terms. They did it through their music, which they made people purchase, you know? And I think that still pays off in that celebrity world. Like to still kind of have a private persona, a private life is kind of the only way in order to maintain it is like to keep that secrecy. And you see multiple celebrities say that. Kerry Washington has said that. Ryan Gosling and Eva Mendes, they've been married for a while. Like nobody really knows anything about their private life. They don't know what their kids look like. No one barely knows what Lauren London's kids look like. You know what I mean? And I think that you have to respect people who still kind of do things that way and they don't share like every little thing. I think that it's still kind of contingent on the person though. You know what I mean? And I think that's really goes for all of us. When you look at social media, like we pick and choose how much we share, but you can see how much people will take what you share and turn it against you. It's just a matter of whether like, sometimes people choose to share things because they're going to use it as a platform or they're going to use it to help other people, which is great. Other times they're using it really to to sell a product, which is, you know, that's questionable. Some people will say it's great, and other people will say that it's not, you know, and I think it's hard to say what's better because like we can't make time stop and we can't get rid of technology. I definitely would say it's better that we have stronger internet. Like that dial-up internet was not the move. That was not the business.
You weren't waiting to find out exclusive pictures on.
We definitely wouldn't be having versus battles or watching news programming with that kind of internet. So, you know what I mean? Like things change, times change. And I think that I think it's kind of cool because we just live in a society where you can make that choice, you know, and I think there's people who like you can look at their followings and see like the Tekashis and the DJ Academics, they have an audience, you know, and then you might have other people who look at them and say like, that's not what I want to be. That's not, you know what I mean? But they've made a fortune off of it. Tekashi, you know, whether you hate him or love him, like he has made good money being the way that he is. I think that goes back to moral ground too, you know, like morally, is that how I would want to get my fortune? No, that's not, you know?
Yeah. No, I guess the danger oftentimes is that you have some young person that sees that and doesn't have the sort of moral North Star that somebody else might have that grew up a certain way. And then they'll see that and be like, oh yeah, that's what I should do, or that's what I should do. And those examples then lead people down a path maybe that they wouldn't have, that it might not have existed before because it wasn't rewarded in the same way. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, you know, that's always sort of the weird thing because it's like, what is even celebrity now? If the Cash Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil can be a celebrity and, you know, and the Queen of England can be a celebrity. It's like, you know, it's this very sort of weird space that I think that we're in that makes it almost not even really
then you still have to look at the gauge, and it's like my mom doesn't know who Bad Baby is, you know, so like that to me, like until you're somebody that my mom knows about, you're not really famous, you know, like. And I find that too sometimes, like I check there's people who will be like, oh my God, you know, you run Bossip or you work for Bossip. And I'm like, my next door neighbor doesn't know what that is. So to me, I haven't done anything yet. Like I still have a lot of work to do, you know? And I think.
No, continue. Sorry.
I think that's really what people need perspective. And I tell people that all the time, like, you know, no matter what you're dealing with, whether you're happy, sad, you know, whatever, if you change your perspective, it can change everything. It changes everything. Yeah, absolutely. You're not famous if you have the right perspective.
Yeah. Does that help keep you grounded also in knowing that even when it comes to a lot of these sort of stories that you may or may not report on, there's numbers that you're going to see in terms of people who have seen it, but it's still like a drop in the bucket compared to like the entire sort of population. Like you said, you know a story is going to do well, but your next door neighbor will just literally not know that entire thing happened. Just be like,
yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing too with when you work for a blog, like every day you have to come, like, especially for Bossip. So we're producing probably up to 45 pieces of content per day. That's a lot of content. Yeah. So like anything that I write today, like it's old by tomorrow. You know, I have to come up with a brand new piece of content. And if people are still reading what we wrote, you know, today, tomorrow, that means I can write an update to it because they're still interested in it. Like that's how I look at it, you know. But I think the priceless thing I tell anybody who's going through it because of something that's in the news or that's in the media is like, we live in a time where everything is like this. And like, literally you can be so embarrassed or so, you know, humiliated or whatever, but the public's memory is so short that by the end of the week, they're on to the next thing, you know? So I think that too, it's perspective.
You know, one of the things that has been in a variety of ways popping up a bunch, and I wanted to get your perspective on, is like as soon as the sort of lockdowns happened, you have all of this digital media stuff sprouting, Demon Time.
Oh God.
and and now, Demon Time linking up with OnlyFans, and OnlyFans sort of also having this crazy explosion. I don't know if you saw their numbers, but their March numbers were like through the roof of people sort of signing up. I'm always interested because obviously the adult industry has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to technology, and especially when it comes to stuff on the internet. Like they've always been
right. Perv's gonna perv.
Yeah, but then there's like the legitimate sort of versions or the iterations that sort of come in after that. And I wanted to get maybe your perspectives, like if we're not going back to shows anytime soon, if we're not going back to, large gatherings, clubs, anything like that, do you see those places becoming where, where people have to essentially entertain their fans in any way they want to, not in the way that,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think just the attention that OnlyFans has gotten, and I like kick myself because I had an idea for something like OnlyFans, like before OnlyFans, and I just wasn't prepared to like get my hands that dirty. But I just should have just did it. But
you can still compete. Why
not? No, I'm good. They got it. They're doing it. I think what's funny is I think if you look at Black Mirror or like anything that's kind of like more about technology and like post, apocalyptic or whatever, like you kind of see a lot of that. You see robot sex, like as soon as they came out with the dolls, you know what I mean? Like the humanoid dolls that people are having sex with or whatever, like sex dolls.
And marrying some people.
Though, you said what?
Some people are marrying them.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing about our society and like, just advancement is like there's people who are really weird. There's a lot of really weird stuff going on out there. And I think also just when it comes to socialization is like, because of the advances of technology, the internet, et cetera, like people are becoming less skilled at actual human contact, human communication, all of those kind of things. And I think you're going to see more. It might not even be OnlyFans. It's going to be something that's even more niche. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people who are just not equipped to deal with life. You know what I mean? Not just like, and because people are figuring out how to make money from it, ways to make money, as long as people are able to like make a living, you're going to see like some outside culture. I was trying to think of the actual word, but as a writer, I can drive myself crazy looking for the actual word.
Okay.
Yeah. But like I think the short answer to what you said is yes, there will be more, and you will see entertainers doing more with it too.
Have you subscribed to Safari's OnlyFans yet?
No, and I'm not interested in Safari's OnlyFans. Like Safari as a category of person, like he seems like a nice person, but I think this is something too that's come from my job, is just like I'm like, the way that we've made certain people famous, you know what I mean? And I think I don't want to take anything away from him. I have a lot of respect for the work he's done as a songwriter. Absolutely. But this idea of like, we want to watch Safari because he's a sex symbol or any of that other stuff, like that is just too much for me. Like, I don't like, my brain doesn't compute that. Like, I don't, when it comes to like some of those reality shows, you see them on Gossip. I'm not the one watching or writing about that.
Yeah, well, you see it happening right before your eyes with Pauly D right now. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, he got cute in quarantine, right?
You know what I'm saying? What is this? It's just a beard.
it's a cute beard, and he was cute before, but now he like, that Sicilian come out in him. He got a little
here we go.
tan.
See,
here I go.
Exactly. You are doing the exact thing. You are doing the thing that you just said.
I mean,
you just said it,
listen,
and now it just
if my coworkers hadn't put, listen, I respect talent, so I'm not even. He wasn't even on my radar. My coworker put that on my radar. I was looking at somebody talented like Kelvin Harrison. He's a great actor.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I don't know. I'm sure you will have any comments you're fine or you can refrain from, but like watching what Yes Jules has done with OnlyFans and turning it into like a
A&R room or something.
Yes, exactly. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, people are doing that on Instagram too. And like, I think it's great to a certain extent, but I think like the bottom line, and this too, being a musician, is like people take such advantage of people who are looking to get a foot in the door. You know what I mean? And it's kind of sad. And I think, I don't want to start taking shots at anybody in terms of like their legitimacy or whatever, because there's she has a position. So if that's how she's choosing to spend her time and energy during this, then that's great. I just hope she's not exploiting any of this. Like I would look instead at like maybe like Barreline from Interscope, who actually is giving people prizes who come on her Instagram Live and show their talents. Like that's where I'd rather direct my focus.
Yeah, it's hard because I'm at a certain point, I'm sure you've thought about it. It's like the amount of times that people are like, yo, let me take you out for coffee. I need to pick your brain about something.
Yeah, and people charge. There's people who charge $175 for a consultation fee for that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean, is like there does become a certain point where that actually is like whether it be experience, whether it be connections, whether it be, just your time is worth a certain amount of money. And
right.
It's weird because, especially as an artist, you realize, having been in this game for whatever amount of time,
right,
that you actually give up so much, so many things for free that are of value because you are chasing some sort of mythical, either the mythical deal, the mythical connection. Like you give up so much of your time, energy, all of this stuff, sort of chasing this sort of thing, that like maybe it is at times better if it's a simple transactional sort of thing rather than selling the dream, right? Like if I was a young artist, I would rather pay $25 to get let's say a comment from her about a record, to be fair, than travel 2 hours to a guitar center to perform for A&Rs on a stage that nothing will happen from, that you got all of your, hopes and dreams sort of up for.
If that's your person that you look to for like,
of course,
doing, and I think like she has some legitimacy because she's done she hosts a lot of events. She's done a lot of events. So I think like, yeah, go ahead. But I would just make sure, like, just for anyone who's thinking of spending money, to have someone critique their art, that they do all the research and they really know like that this person has, their actual credentials, that they actually have a position, that and also like, what are they doing with this? Is it limited to just giving you criticism, or are they also going to potentially take your music somewhere? Because a lot, like that's the thing, like there's a lot of these, like I said, there's a lot of these going on. Some are on live. Some of them are on, as you said, OnlyFans or whatever. But to me, they're like, as opposed to spending money on a subscription for OnlyFans, you could be doing it for free. You could do one of these for free. And I have friends who are A&Rs who they do free sessions, and they even link back up with the people afterwards. I'm on a podcast, a weekly podcast called The A-Room Show. And I have a Grammy-winning producer who does the podcast with me. I have a #1 songwriting songwriters who are on the show with me. And we have a platform where people can submit music, and they actually will link up with the people if they're in Atlanta for sessions if they like the music, you know? So I think that's really all I would say is like do all your research, because as opposed to spending money on one thing, like you can actually do it for free. And I think that goes for everything. I saw like a thread on Twitter, I want to say, the other day that was kind of critiquing the women's empowerment seminars and brunches and stuff like that. And they pointed out that most of the information that is given is Googleable. You know what I mean? And I really think that's part of the problem is people nowadays, they like glamorize influencers or music industry executives or whatever they choose to glamorize. But most of us, if we are legit, we learn from experience. There was no class we paid for or, you know, magical person we sat down with who could give us all the answers. You learn it from experience. And the things that you can't learn from experience, like the things you actually should know by studying your craft, you can research, you can read books, you can look on the internet, you know. And I think the problem is like, because we have like this fast answers found, like whether it's Google or Instagram or Twitter, and people aren't unwilling to like take a step further and actually go and listen to the music, learn about the producers that you like, learn about the history of the genre that you're interested in. And I think like that's really what we have to do is like start making those things more valuable, because one thing I do see with the younger generation, the people who would subscribe to a Only Jules, I mean, I said
you just made a whole new site that she might take. See, you messed up.
People who would subscribe to Yes Jules's OnlyFans, that age group, they're like the microwave people. You know, I think people of our generation consider them like microwave generation, because they want to be bosses immediately, like either without college or right straight out of college. And so much of becoming a boss is like appreciating the time comes before that and the things that go into becoming that. You know, it's not like we all have the answers overnight, you know. And I think that's something also that we're learning in this time period too, is like we have time, and we literally were like wasting it. And now if we're given another day, it's a blessing. So we should be using it and using this time to do, you know, really the quality kind of work that will fulfill us, because anything that you get easily, you're not going to appreciate easily.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially as it relates to right now. I was saying this on a previous podcast. It's like, now that streaming numbers are down, now that no tours are happening, now that if you were making an album and you're basically just sitting around, like maybe you take the time now to make those things mean more, matter more. Take the time to dig into the music and make sure that what you create is something that hopefully says something, even if it's just your perspective, that lasts and is not as fleeting as some of this other, as some of the content has been prior to. There was something else that you said in there that I thought was interesting. And I'm wondering if this is like, it's funny because the internet, to me, living in LA, it feels like the internet is making everything more LA in this very sort of weird, in that like when you're in LA, you're always, if you grew up in New York, let's say for me, if you grew up in New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, most of these places, like a boss is again an avatar of a person that you read about in a magazine, like Puff or whatever. These were these things that were really far from you. They were not. They were only a sort of dream, and it felt like this really long idea to get to. But when you're in LA, you could be at the club, or you could be at a house, or be at be wherever, and then that person is right there, and it makes it feel like it makes it feel like you're so much closer to fame and you're so much closer to that sort of success that there is like oh, they're right there. If I just go right there, then it'll happen. And I think that's happened in terms of social media, because you can just hit the person and they might respond. Yeah. And then you feel like, oh, well, I could just be riding in the car next to them next week. And it's just like, no, there's always, everybody that you talk to that's found success, like you said, you going through the recession and having to really just figure it out. It's always a long road. It's always much longer than you expect it to be. And it always detours in some crazy ways. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, this is how I got here. Okay.
Yeah, and, definitely.
And being open to that. And I'm not going to keep you long. I just have one last question and we could leave it at that. In all these years, through all these iterations of yourself, what have you learned from hip hop that you use in your everyday life?
What have I learned from hip hop that I use in my everyday life?
Yeah.
That's hard.
Doesn't have to be everything. It could just one thing that kind of comes to mind.
I think the thing is just to keep going. You know what I mean? I think like that's really what I've learned. Hip hop, it don't stop. You know what I mean? So like I literally keep going, so I think we all get discouraged in whatever path we happen to choose. And I think like hip hop constantly is changing and growing. And I think like we as individuals should too. So I think that's the thing for me is like, I don't ever like feeling stuck or like that I'm not gaining a new skill set. So like at each point in my career, I've tried to add something on. So like I used to like to be behind the scenes. I didn't like to do my interviews on camera. I really preferred to have the artists on camera. I would interview them. And, I hit a point where I was just like, I felt stuck. Like I was just like, I wasn't doing anything new. And then the new challenge was becoming comfortable on camera, so like that was the next step. And then I started pushing myself to do more. And I found that like the first time I went on the talk, which I ended up being on there, I want to say 5 or 6 times. And I got such a great thrill out of it. And as someone who like I said, I don't like a lot of spotlight. I really prefer to be kind of like this unknown entity. But when that camera came on me, I was like, oh, here I am. And I'm talking to the middle-aged, women of America. And I like it, So I think that's the thing that I've learned from hip hop is just to like be open to doing different things and pushing yourself and growing, like to like keep going, and never be afraid to try new things.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on Think Like a Rapper. Thanks.